At 6:30 in the morning on September 2nd, 2025, U.S. surveillance screens lit up with a single target. A Venezuelan speedboat tearing across the Caribbean Sea at full throttle. Its twin outboards carved a white scar across the waves, carrying armed men who thought they were running just another smuggling trip. They had no idea that the ocean around them had already become a cage. From above, the sky wasn't empty. American satellites were staring down, their thermal sensors picking up the boat's exhaust trail like a glowing arrow. Thousands of miles away, analysts were tracking its every move in real time. What the crew thought was freedom of open water was in reality a trap already closing in. At 25,000 feet, a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance jet circled, its powerful radar slicing through clouds, painting the boat's position with mathematical precision. Even its encrypted radio bursts back to Caracas weren't private anymore. The Poseidon was listening, recording, and feeding it all into the Navy's combat web. And on the horizon, just a speck at first, came the silhouette of an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. 9,000 tons of American steel bristling with missiles and sensors. To the smugglers, it was invisible. To the U.S. Navy, the boat's fate was already sealed. What looked like just another smuggler's run was about to become something very different. A global incident, because by the end of that day that boat would be destroyed. Caracas would call it an act of war, and the world would watch the U.S. Navy sink a cartel-linked vessel in international waters, and that lesson would be brutal. Escape was never possible. The smugglers didn't know it, but from the very moment their boat throttled up, they had entered a kill box. The term sounds dramatic, but in U.S. Navy doctrine, it's brutally simple. Once a target crosses into a mapped sector, multiple layers of surveillance and firepower overlap until escape is mathematically impossible. That's what the Venezuelan boat had just stumbled into. High above, satellites weren't just taking pictures. They were tracking heat signatures, electronic chatter, even the faint trail of hydrocarbons in the exhaust. Every second the boat's engine screamed, the data stacked higher. The smugglers thought they were fast. In truth, their top speed of around 50 knots meant nothing. And a battle space stitched together by sensors moving at the speed of light. The next layer was the P-8 Poseidon. Now, don't think of this as just an aircraft. It's a flying command post. Its Canopy 10 radar can sweep hundreds of miles of ocean in a single pass, detecting vessels as small as a skiff. The crew of the Poseidon didn't just mark the boat, they shadowed it. Whenever the smugglers changed course, the P-8 adjusted, quietly keeping the target inside its electronic crosshairs. And the Poseidon wasn't just watching it. It was listening. Every radio call back to Venezuela. Every encrypted burst was intercepted and tagged. What the smugglers believed was secure traffic was already being archived on U.S. servers before their message even finished transmitting. Meanwhile, the surface trap closed in. An Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, in this case one of the most advanced guided missile warships afloat, was maneuvering into position. To casualize, it was just a dot on the horizon. But beneath that steel deck sat 96 vertical launch cells capable of unleashing everything from surface-to-air missiles to land attack tomahawks. Against a drug boat, well, that was overkill. But the destroyer carried more than missiles. Its ANS Spy-1 radar system, part of the Aegis combat suite, was quietly feeding positional data to every allied ship and aircraft in range. The smugglers weren't being hunted by one ship. They were caught in a network. That network is the real meaning of surrounded. Not a ring of vessels visible on the water, but an invisible web of overlapping surveillance, weapons, and coordination. The boat could turn north, south, or try to sprint westward, towards Venezuelan waters. It didn't matter. Every heading was already plotted. Every potential escape vector covered. When the order came down, it wasn't dramatic. No shouted warnings, no last-minute chase. The Poseidon's crew transmitted target confirmation. The destroyer's combat information center acknowledged. Fire control radars aligned, and in a moment the smugglers never saw coming. Precision strike turned their fiberglass hull into burning wreckage. The boat was destroyed in seconds. Escape was impossible. For U.S. commanders, the operation was a textbook success. For the smugglers, there had never been a chance. The ocean they thought gave them freedom had in reality become a cage built of satellites, aircraft, and steel. The Pentagon wasted no time in announcing the outcome. Within hours, Washington declared the mission a counter-narcotics success. The target, they said, wasn't just a random smuggler's vote. It was directly tied to Tren de Aragua, Venezuela's most powerful criminal network. According to the White House, the boat was carrying cartel operatives and narcotics bound for regional distribution. U.S. officials claimed the strike eliminated 11 suspected cartel operatives in international waters. President Donald Trump himself amplified the claim, posting that the strike showed America's resolve to hunt cartel operatives wherever they operate. But while U.S. officials spoke of success, the reaction elsewhere was explosive. In Caracas, Nicolas Maduro called it outright aggression. He argued the men on board were Venezuelan citizens killed without trial, their destruction a violation of sovereignty and international law. The strike quickly jumped from the headlines about drugs to debates about legitimacy. Allies stayed quiet, but analysts noted the risks. If every major power claimed the right to sink boats on suspicion alone, international waters could turn into free fire zones. For the Navy, it was a clean kill. For Venezuela, it was a crime. And for the watching world, it was a dangerous precedent with consequences far beyond a single burning boat. From the outside, the strike looked like a blunt force act of power, a Navy destroyer wiping out a drug boat in seconds. But inside the Pentagon, the operation was valued for something else entirely: data. Every smuggler run is a living intelligence exercise, and this one handed the U.S. Navy more than just a burning halt. Think about it. The smugglers had made radio calls to their handlers in Venezuela. They had plotted a course, chosen fuel stops, and carried equipment. All of that was intercepted, recorded, and tagged. The Navy didn't just erase a boat. They mapped part of the Trend era's logistic network. Every voice on the radio, every frequency used, every timing pattern, it all went straight into U.S. databases. The next time one of those voices pops up, the system will recognize it instantly. The same goes for tactics. How do smugglers react when shadowed by aircraft? Which routes do they prefer in daylight versus at night? Do they run straight for Venezuelan waters when pressured? Or do they try to hide among commercial traffic? Each answer gives analysts more tools to predict and corner the next run. In military terms, this is called pattern of life intelligence, and it's priceless. It's not the first time U.S. forces have flipped intimidation or aggression into a data harvest. When Venezuelan F-16s later buzzed the USS Jason Dunham, the destroyer quietly logged their radar signatures and comms, turning a dangerous flyby into an intelligence windfall. When Chinese Z-10 helicopters tried to rattle U.S. patrols in the South China Sea, they gave away their electronic fingerprints for free. Even the Houthis firing shoulder-launched missiles in the Red Sea exposed the infrared plumes of their systems. Intel the Navy stored for future fights. That's the hidden gem. The smugglers believed that they were testing luck on the high seas. In reality, they were unwitting participants in a surveillance operation far larger than themselves. And in modern warfare, the side that controls the data usually controls the fight. The smugglers' boat destruction didn't stay a tactical footnote either. It detonated across a political landscape. Within hours of the strike, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro appeared on state television, fists clenched, accusing Washington of murder. He called the attack a violation of sovereignty and vowed retaliation, telling his people that America had crossed a red line. For a country already under heavy sanctions and in deep economic crisis, the incident became fuel for nationalist fire. Maduro ordered the Venezuelan armed forces to full alert. State media broadcast images of F-16 jets revving engines on cracked airstrips and troops marching through coastal garrisons. To domestic audiences, this was framed as defiance. Venezuela would not be intimidated. But behind the bravado, the reality was harsher. The country's air force was aging. Its fleet of U.S.-made F-16s was badly in need of parts, and its Navy no match for American destroyers prowling just offshore. Caracas couldn't meet Washington heat-in, but it could play a dangerous game of provocation. The game unfolded just 3 days later. 2 Venezuelan F-16s roared low over the USS Jason Dunham, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer operating in international waters. The Pentagon called the move reckless and provocative. From the deck of the Dunham, sailors watched the jet scream by at altitudes so low that their shock waves rippled across the water. To Caracas, it looked like defiance, a message that Venezuela would not back down. To the U.S. Navy, it was a gift. Every radar pulse, every radio call from those jets was vacuumed up, cataloged, and stored, turning intimidation into raw intelligence. But the danger of escalation was real. The Navy had standing orders: hold fire unless directly threatened. Yet, in a world where supersonic fighters close distance in seconds, the line between provocation and attack can blur fast. One misread radar lock or accidental missile release could have turned a tense flyby into an opening shot of a war. Washington responded in kind, not with restraint, but with reinforcements. Within a week, 10 F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters deployed to Puerto Rico, just barely a 2-hour flight from Venezuelan airspace. These weren't relics from the 1980s like Caracas F-16s. They were America's crown jewel. Fifth-generation aircraft designed to dismantle enemy defenses before they even knew it was being targeted. The message was unmistakable. If Venezuela wanted to gamble in the skies, the U.S. was ready to raise the stakes. The ripple effects spread even further. Regional governments from Colombia to the islands of Lesser Antilles watched nervously as the Caribbean filled with American warships and combat patrols. Shipping companies rid tankers. Diplomats in Washington warned that one destroyed speedboat has become a flashpoint, threatening to destabilize the whole hemisphere. What began as a counter-narcotic strike against a single cartel-linked boat had morphed into a confrontation between two states, turning a quiet Caribbean sea into the stage for a new Cold War standoff. By the end of that first week of September of 2025, the Caribbean Sea looked the same on the surface. Blue water, rolling waves, merchant ships on the horizon. But beneath the calm, the balance of power had shifted. A single speedboat packed with smugglers who thought they were untouchable had dragged Venezuela and the United States into a dangerous new standoff. For the smugglers, the ocean was supposed to be freedom. For the U.S. Navy, it became a proving ground. Satellites, patrol aircraft, and destroyers worked in silent coordination, showing how modern warfare doesn't rely on traumatic chases or warning shots. It relies on networks, on data, on precision that leaves no room for escape. That boat was never just a boat. It was a signal, a test, and a trigger. For Caracas, the incident was humiliation, dressed as defiance. Maduro could roar on television. His jets could buzz American warships. But none of it changed the reality. Venezuela's military is outmatched. Its hardware aging, its tactics already logged into American databases. Every attempt to project strength only exposed more weaknesses. So here's my question to you. What do you think of this whole situation? Was the U.S. right to strike, or has this escalated way too far between Washington and Caracas? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to see how you see it. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed this breakdown. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And as always, if you want to take it a step further and support our channel directly, please join the fleet. You get loyalty badges, priority responses, and you'll help us bring more true maritime stories to the surface. Click join on our channel page and get on board. Because if there's one thing that this incident proves, it's that when you gamble against the U.S. Navy, the house always wins. See you next time.